All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 16 of BrewFOs. Today, my guest is Colin Frangicetto. He is the drummer for This Day Forward, the guitar player for Circa Survive, and he's an artist, both digital and physical. Um, I'm stoked to have you here, man. Thanks for doing this. Uh, cheers
Cheers.
to whatever you're drinking.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a little cocktail here. It's it's so it's part liquid death sparkling water. It's the squeezed to death flavor.
Okay.
Um so it's kind of like orangey. And then I put in this juice. It's like Uncle Matt's. Um it's kind of like grapefruity. It's a whole mix, but it makes it this weird purpley color, and then there's some mezcal in there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I've never had liquid death before. I see everybody
Oh,
drinking it. I've never had it.
I never had it up until like I don't know, maybe like less than a year ago. I mean, I had the regular canned water, but I was always like, yeah, whatever. I would never really pay for canned water, but like I am a little addicted to various sparkling waters. So once I saw they had sparkling waters that were like, low cal and just like agave, I was like, oh, I'm gonna check that out. And they're fucking they're dangerous. They're very addictive.
Nice, dude. I haven't had mezcal in a while, so that sounds good as well. But I'm doing a Harland Hazy IPA.
Oh,
Harland is a
beautiful.
good brewery out here in San Diego. So cheers again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, cheers.
So man, I I think you know your bands, both of your bands are really fucking cool, which they're both pretty much done, right? For
Yeah,
okay.
for all intents
Um
and purposes.
yeah. Uh but it was such a treat. My wife and I this last week with we both put on headphones and we went through your body of work with Circa Survive. Um and what a how fun, dude, to just like hear, what everyone's doing, like, and focus on it in the dark with your eyes closed and just being like, oh dude, they're doing this, he's doing this, he's doing this. It's just such a treat, dude. It was really cool.
Wow. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Great work. And
Thank
I think with that, I think you guys are one of the coolest bands in the last 20 years. So
you. Wow.
um I'm stoked to have you on here. But yeah, dude, let's get into it. I usually, you know, uh wait till later to talk about the UAP stuff, but I think I kind of want to change it up and maybe just bring it up like right away with you, if that's cool.
Yeah, let's go.
What where are you at with this stuff? Like, have you ever seen a UFO before?
hmm Yeah. Um, yeah, I have a long history with this stuff.
Nice.
Probably I'm gonna say first the first thing that I saw that was pretty weird. Probably I was 14-ish. Um, and then, pretty much throughout my entire life have had an interest in it ever since then. Um, I think that sort of like, you know, um, unironically, it coincided with my interest in like psychedelics and conspiracy theory and pretty much everything off the beaten path you could imagine. So yeah, I've had a lot of interesting encounters, I guess you could say. You know, um, I still don't know quite like where I fall in terms of like what I think they are. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to, I could like literally probably occupy this entire podcast and not have you say a word. So
No, no,
I'll
it's fine.
I'll, I'll just
I,
I'll just stop there.
no, I'm
You
glad.
can ask me
Let me
questions.
let's that's rad, dude. Let's start with that 14 years old thing. So like you're 14. What did you see? What do you remember seeing exactly?
So basically, had a strange incident with a group of friends. We kind of we snuck into a park, a nearby park after dark with this plan of like going fishing. Um, but it was more of an excuse to just like, smoke cigarettes and have a tent set up and kind of just be, kind of bad. Anywhere you're not supposed to be was always interesting. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, honestly, like over the years, especially talking to some of those people that were there for that, my memory of it has kind of changed and shifted around, and I don't know that I fully trust my memory of it. All I know is that there was a very weird thing that happened kind of in the middle of the night where we got woken up and there was like strange lights and then there was also sort of an entanglement with like the security at the park. So we were running, we were frantic. There was a little bit of cannabis involved. Um, but there was a weird incident where like we were like we basically like ditched our tent and like we were afraid that we were going to get like arrested for trespassing or whatever. We were running through the woods and we were running from these security guards and then we started seeing this really strange light in the distance and um all I remember is that there was sort of like this intense moment where my friend got like caught on a fence, cut his arm on the fence. But while all of this kind of like chaos is happening, there's this like in the background, there's like this weird light thing happening that is from the opposite direction of where we were being chased from. And then all of a sudden, you know, we're in this neighborhood. We cut through the woods. We're in this neighborhood walking towards my friend's house. And my friend's like his arms all torn up from the fence. And we just had this very strange uh thing happen where this guy walked by us in a baseball uniform and it was like I don't know 4 or 5 in the morning, like it was just very strange, full baseball uniform. And we didn't really he just waved and walked by us and we kind of ignored it. It was just like whatever. And then continue walking. This is a bit of a walk. This is a few miles from the park to my friend's house who lived by there. And our plan was just to go to his house. His parents didn't really care. We would just kind of all, go there and crash there. And essentially we we're walking through this neighborhood and then I mean, to my memory, it was like a person in a hazmat suit was the next thing. And it was like, is that a hazmat suit or is it like a space suit? In my head, I was like, oh, it's like got to be like a hazmat suit. But again, I was young, I was kind of stupid. And the whole time, we're not really like talking to each other. Like, we're all just kind of like taking this in. And the thing that got really weird was that the next thing that happened was, so like, okay, rolling back to the baseball guy,
Yeah.
um, young, probably like I'm gonna say like mid to late 20s, right? So after the hazmat suit, which again, that person, uh, there was like a truck there, and that was what made it not so weird. But there also was this house that like was glowing red. Again, I don't know what any of this means, but uh, so anyway, that happened. We walked by the hazmat guy. Then the next thing is, and this is what's really freaky, and I think what really prompted all of us to like, um, then start talking to each other after this was we see baseball uniform again, but 90 years old, beard, like full, like looked like the same person, but like had aged.
What the fuck?
And like honestly, like we were just like, yeah, my friend was just like, wait, wait, what? And then as he was saying that, um, we heard like sirens, and like so we instantly thought, oh my God, like maybe we're in trouble now. And it was kind of like perfectly timed. It was like this very strange thing. So all of a sudden we got scared again and started running. And we ran, we went to my friend's house, and all I remember, honestly, like the next thing I remember is waking up on his lawn. Like me, me and two of the other guys, we wake up on the lawn. He, dude who lives there comes out of the house, and we're all talking. Guy who got caught on the fence, all bandaged up, like just super fucking strange. And then his mom came out, and we were all like, what's our story? What are we doing? And I'm just like, why were we sleeping on the fucking lawn? Like, what? Like, it just felt like a very like, oh, we lost time kind of thing later.
Yeah.
Um, but so there was a bunch of people that all lived around this area, and essentially, um, we we went back to a friend's house. I went to this other kid's house who was with us. We went to his house. We were like smoking cigarettes out on his porch, kind of like talking about it, feeling very freaked out. And this was the next day. Yeah, because I basically like went to his house. We talked. We hung out. I slept there, and we were talking to his older brother about it. We were outside, and again, not that far away from where the whole thing kind of transpired. Um, like we're talking about it, and then we noticed like multiple like helicopters, like just out and about, and like I don't know, the whole thing was just super bizarre. And then I'm like, I don't know. We went over the story multiple times. Then two of the people that were party to it started acting really strange, and basically were like, don't fucking tell anybody about this, and like got really like kind of emotional about it. And there was kind of like a splintering of the friend group after that. It was very,
Whoa.
yeah, it was very strange. So whatever the fuck that was, I don't
So
know.
and so initially it was just a light from the opposite of where the security guard's chasing you. And that's all you
Yeah,
can remember is just like a light. Was it up in the sky? Was it above like the trees or was it lower?
it was coming through the trees like in the distance. And the other thing is that like there was a lot of like hills and sort of like creeks involved and a lot of water, and it was really dark. Um And the other thing was, there was another strange thing is that, so initially, I remember before we like went to sleep, there was like we were hearing like drums. We were hearing like weird drums like in the
What the
woods. Yeah. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's very bizarre. But anyway, it was weird enough to set me on a strange sort of like path of like, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really strange. I mean, I think for a long time I kind of like I would just kind of like go in and out of like full on all in believer to like hard hard skepticism, and and then kind of like always kind of like land back into this place of like I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean realistically, I think that now as like, a 43-year-old, like I'm kind of like I think the truth is somewhere in between a lot of what we imagine, like I think I know that there's, at this point now we like there's so much disinformation, and like there's so much fuckery about in terms of like, the government has ran, or like just black ops, just like all kinds of different entities have ran these programs, either to make you believe or make you not believe. And half the time, it seems like it's related to military stuff, and then other times, like, you kind of think that, well, hey, maybe it's like a mask of a mask, and you're like, oh wait, like, um, the fake UFOs are to kind of like, or UAPs, whatever you want to call them now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fake ones are kind of like to like throw you off from the real ones, and the ones you think are the real ones are actually, uh, faking you out for some other secret thing you can't know about. So I don't know. There's obviously still quite a lot of mystery to it, and um, yeah, I don't know. I could go on for a while more. I would just say that, I mean, and we'll probably get into this in the conversation. I think, we're living in sort of like a post-truth era,
Yeah.
and I find that immensely interesting in terms of the timing of a lot of these disclosures and stuff. I think sometimes, like, it legit feels like to me that they're almost like waiting for technology to catch up to the point of like where, I mean, obviously the disclosures happened in almost like the perfect time in which, like, we had been just fully blasted out in terms of like our attention span. We had just been completely, like, fully drained, of any
Oh
ability
yeah.
to give a fuck, right? Like, and so I think most people were like looking around like, why isn't anyone freaking out about this? And I think it was almost like a test, in a way that you kind of see these drips happening that feel like tests, that feel like, oh well, let's see how this, makes people react. And um I don't know, I think there's kind of been like this resounding sort of like silence, or just sort of like indifference in terms of like mainstream reaction.
Hmm.
Um a lot of it's kind of like, oh yeah, duh. And then other people are just like, I don't know. Like, there's just this such a mixed reaction. And then when you look at the timing now, of everything that's sort of coming up, like, I don't know, if I'm sure you're up to date on all this, like, Immaculate Constellation stuff, and
Yeah.
and just everything that's forthcoming. I mean, I just think that, like, dude, by the time that the real shit gets disclosed, we're going to be in this place with AI that we will not be able to tell anything of like what's real and what's not. And um that's where my interests have been lately, in just in terms of like, like, reality is just so malleable. It's never been more plastic, it feels like. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Sometimes I know that's all great, dude. Even that you're familiar with Immaculate Constellation, because that's the big thing going on right now. And for those of you that don't know, there's a whistleblower that came forward that said there's a program called Immaculate Constellation that's been retrieving non-human craft and biologics and trying to reverse engineer the craft and stuff.
And that
So
it was supposedly, I mean, again, this is sort of sus. A lot of it is always sus to me, but obviously, the big headline around it was that it was illegally withheld from the big eight, and that essentially, yeah, that there's some serious, like, um, illegality happening in terms of it being withheld from people. Again, hard to know until like the whistleblower stuff is like a little bit more clear. And it seems like the people that deliver the info are also like, I mean, they're more obviously like concerned about the things being withheld and that aspect of it, but um I don't know, it seems relatively credible so far.
yeah, man, I I've brought this up on on this show before, but like I wasn't really into any of this until the 2017 New York Times article. And when that came out, I was like, oh, I should just dive in and read maybe some of the books, or like hear military's been saying. And then I'm neurodivergent. I didn't find out
Okay.
till 2021, but like when I jump onto something, I jump onto something. So like
Yeah.
I just started reading through all the accounts and stuff, and there's a lot of like military people accounts that are kind of like yours when you were 14, like weird time stuff. They see people that are like weird wearing weird stuff, or like they wake up somewhere and it's like their watches are different times, or like just all this weird stuff. And it's like there's too many accounts from like so many credible people that there's something going on here. And I know that there's that term believer, which I try to stay away from because I've come from a Christian background, and
Yeah.
then I left, and now whenever I hear the belief word, I'm kind of like, ugh. So,
Yeah.
I'm not in some new religion. I'm just trying to figure out what the fuck's going on here, So,
Truly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally feel you on all that. And yeah, I think that um yeah, I mean, more strange things happen later when I started touring, especially. There was a period of time in the This Day Forward days, there was like a period of time where a whole string of strange things happened, and all of us experienced a lot of it together. There was, you know, uh, just like you said, like kind of some of it is just really fucking bizarre. Like, and you know what? Like the thing, the memory that I kind of like, retrieved for you there, from when I was younger, the more I started learning about it, like the phenomenon, of abduction and like all these other strange things that have happened to people or people witnessing things, it did kind of give me chills the first time I learned about the concept of a screen memory. Like I was just like, because just because of how bizarre the things were and how almost benign and like a fucking baseball player, like what the fuck is that,
yeah.
and so there were just these aspects to a lot of the things that I experienced that just felt so uniquely, you know yeah, just they were strange, but like in a very um uncliche kind of like non-cinematic way, like which felt way more alien, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because your brain is like, okay, where's the gray, like where's the little gray guy or whatever, but like all this other crap, like the stuff that would happen when I was touring, like we had weird run-ins with people at gas stations, which obviously that's not that weird, but so that would happen, and then immediately we so we had this very strange encounter with a guy at a gas station. I was walking around. I had a an analog cassette recorder, and I was like just recording sounds all the time. I was just, I'm also neurodivergent, so I have weird, strange, get fixated on things, and just my special interests take over, and then that's it. So for a long, I don't know, probably at least a year solid, I carried around this little micro cassette recorder, and I was just constantly recording either like field recordings of just ambient noise, or like I would just randomly walk up to people and start interviewing them and just ask them stuff. So I was at this gas station, and I just went up to this guy, and I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like asked him a couple questions. I was like, "You ever see any weird stuff in the skies around here?" And he turned around and looked at me with the craziest look. And I remember like the other guys in the band were just like looking at me like, oh my God. And he was just like, he just started laughing so hard, and just like this classic, like evil, like super bizarre laugh. Um, and then he said something just in a very strange sort of like, Southern accent that I can't recall, but I remember all of us just being like, what the fuck? Uh, and immediately after that happened, all of a sudden we were like stuck in traffic, and like it must have been like, I don't know, a dozen police cars just like all these sirens, all these ambulances just like rushing past us. And we're just like, what the hell is going on? That's weird. And then my friend's like, what the hell is that? And we like look up in the sky and there's like this like crazy looking like funnel. It's like a funnel cloud, just like massive, crazy looking cloud. But it was the weirdest shape I've ever seen. It was like a cylinder shape. And it was
Whoa.
yeah, and we were all just like sitting there in traffic staring at it like what the fuck is that? And then it was just like the next 24 hours was just like non-stop bizarreness. Like um we played a show, we got out of the show, there was a fist fight right outside, and the fist fight escalated to this guy getting pepper sprayed. The guy who got pepper sprayed stumbled into the street, got hit by a car, and we were just it was just like this super like what the fuck? What is going on? And we're like, let's get the hell out of here. And like we packed up everything, we start driving. We drive into a gas station. As we pull into the gas station, there's like three separate fist fight brawls happening in the fucking parking lot. And we were like, okay, let's get gas somewhere else. And the band we were on tour with is like following us, and they're just like, what the hell are they doing? But also obviously like they saw the weird shit too. And we like are driving to go to a different gas station. We turn down a one-way street the wrong way. We're like, fuck, okay. And I'm like, yo, like turn around, turn around. Like, so we pull into this driveway, and all of a sudden, as we pull in, all these cops like swarm around us, and we see them they're basically like we're like, oh, are we in trouble for going down a one-way street? Like, is this really what's happening right now? They like rush past us and they're like, get out of here. You need to get out of here right now. They like charge down and like kick this door down. And they're like doing like a crazy like drug house bust, like right in where we're pulling. And we're like, okay, so we're like, let's get out of here. And as we're like signaling to the other band, like, we got to get out of here. And they're in like a short bus, and like so as soon as they turn on their like reverse, it like makes this huge crazy beeping noise, like beep, beep. So they're reversing. All the cops like are looking over, like, what the fuck are you doing? Uh
You're giving us away.
yeah. So we're just like, oh my God. And so we finally get the fuck this all like went down in Cleveland, by the way.
Whoa.
And so that entire first of all, that entire day, after the funnel cloud, as we're like in and out of the venue, just nonstop fire engines and police all day, like just nonstop. And I guess like some cities that's somewhat normal. Like if I was in New York, I wouldn't have even blinked. But it was very strange. Um, just the amount of sirens, constant, constant, constant. But anyway, so all of that weird shit happens. We finally get out the outskirts of Cleveland. We go to a hotel, and I remember I had been recording stuff all day long, and I'm just like recording stuff, us like bullshitting in the hotel room. And like I remember going to sleep, and then the next morning I wake up and like I can't find my fucking recorder anywhere. And I'm like looking around, looking around, looking around. And like finally I find it. It's like under the bed that's across, like I was in one bed, and then there was another bed. It was underneath the far side of the other bed. And I was just like, how the fuck? Like I remembered literally putting it next to me as I slept. So I'm like, either the rest of the guys are totally fucking with me right now. No, they played it off pretty well. But the thing that was really weird is that when I finally went back, I'm like, oh, can't wait to listen to all that Cleveland shit. Like 90% of it wasn't there. Like it was literally like the gas station guy.
Whoa, weird.
And I was just like, all right, dude, this is bizarre. Like I don't know what to make of that. You know what I mean? Like that's like how like even telling you this right now, like it's kind of like embarrassing because I'm like, it doesn't mean anything. It like who knows what any of that, maybe it's just all coincidence. It's just totally random, insane shit that happens. But you can't help but just be like, what the fuck is that about? Yeah,
No,
so
dude,
anyway.
I don't think it's embarrassing. I mean, I know exactly what you're saying. Like, even, stuff that's happened to me that I try to explain to people. like what it's almost like what do you do with that? Like you tell somebody it and it's like what do you do with it? But it happened.
Yeah.
And that's the weird thing about like it's almost like the phenomenon, what they call the phenomenon, it like encompasses all this shit. And
Yeah.
it's like, and so what do you do with it? You just know that there's something that's happening that's more than this.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
you're like, what is it? You know?
Yeah. I
What's
mean,
going on?
yeah, I mean these days, like, I definitely get a chuckle like thinking about the mysterious sort of like, I don't know, metaphysical stuff, but I'm definitely my head is definitely way more focused on, you know, um, what is a lot of this stuff like distracting from,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of it is political, a lot of it is like very unsexy, very like not not fun to talk about. And um I do think that there is like a correlation though, like I can't help but feel that quite often, like there is yeah, there's a correlation between, especially like these new sets of disclosures and when they happen, and what else is going on in the world as they happen. um there does seem to be like sleight of hand in terms of the way it's utilized now. um but I can never know for sure, and I think that's sort of the thing that's most interesting about all of it, is that there is like at the core of it, there are some pretty profound mysteries involved. And you kind of expect that maybe there are certain people out there that know the truth of it. For sure that there's people that know a lot more than you do, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Um yeah, I wonder how many people out there really know the actual truth of it. It's probably pretty small.
Yeah, like you know, you're familiar with Lou Elizondo, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, his book came out, and I read that. And there's a part where he talks about neurodivergence, which I was like, "What?" And talks about this part of the brain that Gary Nolan, a professor at Stanford, has been studying that a lot of neurodivergent people have. That's it's larger,
Mm,
and sometimes when they encounter a UAP, that part will grow. And I think it's called the
interesting.
caudate putamen, something like that.
Okay.
I'll put it up.
Interesting.
Um, and that was crazy when I was reading his book. But I know he knows a lot more. And whenever he's in interviews, he's like, it just seems like the guy just wants to like tell you, but he can't because of security clearances. He'll be in
So
prison or whatever. But
that's interesting to me. Like, what do you recall, like what was the context of that? Like, was he inferring anything by that, or just like he was just noting that that is
I
something they
think
noticed?
I think it was if I just recently um got the book and we finished it, but like it was a chapter. I think he was talking about he was in the remote viewing program
Hmm.
Stargate with Hal Puthoff.
Yeah.
And uh for those of you guys watching, look it up. CIA Stargate program, Hal Puthoff. I'll put links to stuff me and Colin are bringing up. But yeah, he was talking about he was one of the remote viewers like under Hal Puthoff, and I think um Gary studied their brains or something, and then that part of it was either more enlarged, and that could help with like you know uh like psychic capabilities for some people. But he's saying that most people like he, the majority of the world probably has these capabilities, but there's some people probably are born with bigger caudate if I'm saying it right.
Mm, mm.
And but some people that encounter UAP that it'll make it grow, and then they'll get
So
these abilities more later.
interesting. Um, yeah, I mean that I could see how maybe that would be relevant. I mean, especially if they, I'm sure they don't have data for this because they probably, weren't looking for this over the years. But I'm sure there's probably a pretty large percentage of people that, in terms of like people who have, um, experience sightings or abductions or encounters, there's probably a pretty large percentage that are neurodivergent, I would probably imagine. And then um, it's interesting to think that that part, if that has anything to do with neurodivergence, then it growing after such encounters, um, you know, maybe, well, it seems like a lot of people, once they have one, there's more that follow, so I don't know. I don't know how relevant that is, but it is interesting for sure, and I'm gonna probably check that out and look it up.
Yeah, it's I was kind of we were kind of blown away. You know, my wife saw it also neurodivergent, but like we were both blown away when we got to that part. We're like, what? But when you're talking about, just there's people that probably know more. Like Lou's got to be one of those guys that knows a ton of shit, and we know he can only say a little bit. Same with like
Yeah.
David Grush, um, from that congressional hearing. That's just like, it's basically just spilling the beans, just being like,
Yeah, like I don't know, like um, again, maybe I've been um maybe I've been uh traumatized in some way. I'm just so skeptical of those people. I mean, I'm just like, you know, I think the problem is just and this is always the problem for me. Like, the factor of money and attention always comes into play. And, you know, like when I got really into like more esoteric stuff, when I was younger, like that was what I was always coming up against. I was like always like, you know, I would get really into some researcher, some author, someone who's doing like, this is like very early like YouTube days when it was like just when YouTube started, yeah, basically when it just started. And I was going down rabbit holes of, all these videos and finding these people and just super obscure, bizarre conspiracy theory stuff. And you'd always like bump up against this sort of friction around their like asking you to pay for what they're doing eventually. And I would, I would try to have like email conversations, correspondence with some of them. And I would always just be like, especially the ones who really delved into sort of the the history of money and like just, all the connections, and I'd always just be like, how do you rationalize this? Like, how do you rationalize everything with like charging $30 for your for your PDF or whatever, and they're just like, well, like, um, I'm just like you, and I gotta pay my bills, and like this is what I'm dedicating my life to. And I was like, okay. And that was just around the time that, it was there was a parallel for me. It might be kind of humorous, but like the parallel for me was sort of like punk rock guilt and sort of
mm,
growing up playing playing music and being in these communities that were like sort of subversive and um kind of just, anti-establishment and um like really wrestling with this this conflict of like monetizing it eventually, in a way that was like, this is my full-time job. I'm making music full time. And I that really, at first, making that jump was very difficult for me. And I had a lot of baggage around it, just a lot of guilt and feeling like, you know, that somehow, like spiritually, like the second money was involved in it, it was going to like do something metaphysically to what we were creating. And you know um by sort of like by proxy us. And over time I definitely got over that, and kind of reprogrammed my brain and into understanding that we're all in this fucking matrix of capitalism
Capitalism.
together.
Yeah.
We're all in this matrix of capitalism together, and that if you can find a way to be free of 9 to 5 in any way that brings you joy, like that's a beautiful thing. There's nothing to, like I was sort of brainwashed in a way of like believing this sort of myth that, you know, the whole like kind of mythology behind like sellouts and that
Mm.
like, anyone who was a full-time professional quote unquote artist had to be selling their soul in some way. Um, and there was certainly times where I felt like I bumped up against those kind of like tensions and conflicts, but that's sort of like how you that's how you realize what kind of artist you are, though. It's like how you interact with those conflicts and how you interact with difficult decisions and make sacrifices for your art and make choices that sort of honor your art and what you hope that it accomplishes within society. So you learn as you get older and you figure shit out. But like, being very young and sort of just being thrown into this um into the fray of just like, yeah, like full-time artistry is it's very difficult. It's very easy to see how many people get just really misguided and taken advantage of, and ultimately a lot of them fail um or die. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Your art's beautiful, by the way, and
Oh,
I'll
thank you.
everyone I will have links. So check out the episode notes. I'll have links to Colin's art and his
Cool.
music as well.
Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
it's beautiful, man. I have not seen your digital art though yet. I know
Oh,
you
cool.
do like NFTs and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
have to
that's
check
my
that out.
I'd say that's probably like almost like more my focus. I've kind of shifted gears over the last few years and really in some ways abandoned the older gallery system that I was a part of, and I kind of even like, I've had quite a departure from the I would say like I was sort of like in like the post surrealist sort of like uh painter thing. I was doing that for a while and even sort of had a departure from that. I still actually do enjoy making work like that. I just do it a lot more seldomly. So now I'm definitely more I'm way more focused on digital work, but I'm making physical work too. The physical work I'm making is way more I would say like way more abstract and way more collage adjacent. So like I'm working a lot with collage, but then I'm also making large like abstract paintings, and there's still figurative stuff in there too. I'm really just trying to like push against the notion that you have to establish this sort of like one note thing that you do as a visual artist, which I think
Mm,
is super prevalent in the painting scene that I was in for a while. Like it was very like it's like very it's kind of drilled into you by a lot of people that the only way you can make it in that world is if you sort of establish this signature look and then you just do that over and over again and sort of, you can slowly progress your themes. And I mean, there's no rules necessarily. However, most of the people that I know within it really do get caught up in this trap of just doing a very similar thing forever. And there's obvious exceptions, and there's people that are just always breaking out of that, and they're the ones that I'm always just like, wow, fuck yeah. Like, but for me, it was like it felt very insidious, and I was just like, I need to get out of this. And around that time is when I found NFTs, and NFTs just really granted me permission in a way to reinvestigate my relationship with digital art. I mean, I've been making digital art for a really long time, but I've been sort of, like I said, like brainwashed into thinking that there was no way to monetize it. There was no purpose for it, with the exception of maybe design work. That there was no sort of like digital fine art, and obviously now, that was probably like 5 or 6 years ago. Um, like when I really was like snapped out of it. But even just in the last 5 years, digital art has come so far in terms of like how people see it and how people view it in terms of like the canon of fine art and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's for a very long time I was sort of misled and kind of discouraged in terms of like, yeah, like how do I ever do anything with this? So I was always messing around with it in private for the most part, and then always really interested in video work. I used to just make these kind of really unhinged, kind of like video collages that would be like some really just like a lot of like different clips I would take from YouTube. Sometimes just like, bizarre speeches by people like Terence McKenna and just different thinkers that I really admired, and then mash them up with like my favorite scenes of movies that I would fuck with, and make these just really bizarre video collages. And people were always just like, what the fuck is this? I think like people didn't really know how to react to them. But anyway, yeah, NFTs really reinvigorated my interest and kind of gave me confidence again to really dive into that in a way that has really totally changed my life. I mean, um, I started making work under the moniker of ADHD back in late 2020, or sorry, early 2021, um, and yeah, just haven't really looked back. That's been, yeah, totally a life-changing thing. Started this like kind of pseudonymous thing over there. Not that I was trying to hide who I was or anything, but it was really important to me that I created something that wasn't kind of, resting on the laurels of what I had already created with Circa, or like what I had created as a visual artist, because I kind of wanted to distance myself from it to some degree. Um and yeah, it wound up just totally um liberating me in a major way. So I've been essentially a full-time digital artist for the last couple of years, and I still do other, like I mentioned, I still do some physical painting, and I had a solo show about a year ago now. That was like my first solo show as ADHD, and that was like really special. That was really special. It was like a mixture of digital and physical work, and it was like a very distinct examination of my neurodivergence and my tinnitus. So like I have very severe tinnitus, asymmetrical tinnitus, um and the combination of that, and if for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's just intense ringing in my ear.
I'm sorry, man.
Um
Oh,
oh no, it's
that's
okay.
ah,
Yeah.
that would be hard. That'd be very, very hard.
It was very hard when it came on. It
Oh,
was very disorienting, and you know, so it actually happened like right around the time that Circa was sort of disbanding, and um yeah, it was very disorienting, and I started having all this like it wound up being unrelated, but I wound up having very intense bouts of vertigo at the
oh,
same exact time. So the same time that I got out of nowhere this very intense ringing in my left ear, um I was starting to get like these bouts of like vertigo that were so intense that I had to just lay down, like I couldn't stand up for long periods of time. It was very, very scary and debilitating, and for that to happen like right around the time where the band was basically like, disintegrating, and we lost a really huge tour that we are depending on. So financially, I was very stressed out. Um,
Oh,
and and so very amazing. I mean, that the alignment of timing in terms of like what happened with my digital fine art career and that fallout. It was just like ships in the night, just like perfect timing.
whoa.
Like never, like I really wouldn't have been able to do anything at that point. There was probably about a 6 month period where I just really was not functioning very well, and really would have, I don't even know how I would have been able to tour. I don't think I would have been able to. So very interesting, the timing, but it was like, oh, I can make artwork basically on my phone and my laptop, and I can just sit on this couch and do that. And being able to do that and provide for myself and my wife, was like, holy shit, so lucky. So um yeah, bizarre, crazy, weird stuff happened.
Where are
um
you now? Sorry, just that like where are you now with it? Like, do you still get the ringing? Are you still getting
oh, it's
vertigo? Are you where
no,
are you?
um so the vertigo wound up being unrelated to the tinnitus, which was really, I was shocked to find that out. In fact, I basically forced my ENT to let me get an MRI because I was pretty concerned that maybe I had like a brain tumor or something
Yeah.
like that. And he kept saying like no, and kind of like gaslighting me and making me think that that was an unreasonable request. And so I just kept pushing, and then eventually he signed off on it after because I went to a therapist. I went to a physical therapist and told them all the symptoms, and they're like, it it definitely could not be, but we really need to rule that out.
Yeah.
Like, because they were like, that's definitely something that happens sometimes. You can have a tumor that's pressing on a nerve, and then essentially can cause all of this stuff that you're experiencing. So they got him to eventually let me get an MRI. I got an MRI, and they were like, "No, you're good." And I was like, "Okay." Um, so I went back to the physical therapist, and they're like, "Okay, then what is actually happening is you're having this type of migraine that essentially manifests as vertigo. And
Whoa.
it's not it doesn't have to create pain in your head. It's just literally that it causes dizziness. And they essentially said that they speculated that it's probably came on from stress, and that essentially, I told them everything that had been going on, and
Yeah.
they're like, well, your tinnitus could have also came on from stress, but it could have been a thing where the stress of everything that was going on in your life, you know, plus the tinnitus knocked you over the edge of stress,
Yeah.
and then you started having, these migraines. And so basically I had to do this physical therapy for about 6 months, where just these different exercises of like covering my eyes and walking and looking
Whoa.
at, I would have to like set up this little thing of words that were far away, like look at them, cover my one eye, walk closer to it, walk away from it, do these like weird different exercises for balance. And yeah, after 6 months it just stopped. Like
Wow.
it got less and less, but then um yeah, and then one day it's just like no more. So that was amazing. I mean, the thing that's really, I'm super grateful for that, because the more I read into it, the more fearful I got, because apparently there's a lot of people that just get them for the rest of their lives. You know, it's
Ugh.
basically it's called like perpetual like dizziness disorder or something like that. And they're basically getting these migraines over and over and over, and it's like this cycle that they can't get out of. So I was very, very, you know, the tinnitus took me a long time to acclimate to. Um, it's still exactly the same. I I go and get a hearing test now yearly. So I just had my like second follow up, and they were like, yeah, it's basically like not budged, which is good. You know, it's not getting worse. And I had just done, you know, a lot of loud noise stuff. You know, so like knowing that I could like practice drums every day and listen to music every day for extended periods of time, and then it really didn't increase it at all. That was that was also a relief. But yeah, it's always there. It does not go away. The brain, your brain is so amazing. Your brain is like so adaptable that for the most part now I don't notice it during the day when I'm just doing normal stuff. Like I can at any point bring my awareness to it and then it's there. But
Hmm.
like but really ultimately my brain has learned to not pay attention to it. So it's just there. Um the only time so I still don't even really care about it at night when I'm trying to go to sleep.
That's what I was going to
Um,
ask you how it
yeah.
was at night. Yeah.
It sucks, but my wife is awesome and she's like she's down with me having like sort of like a comfort show on before we go to sleep or something. So we just put some show on really like low volume and that
Yeah.
just kind of masks it a little bit. If there's times where we don't really want the TV light flickering, we'll put on, you know, some type of like sound therapy, like noise like different frequencies, pink noise sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, and that's that can be helpful too. But I find that the it's more mental for me. So having a like sometimes I'll go to sleep with like a podcast if I have to. You know, but really the low level TV kind of just it like my brain just sort of like half pays attention to it, gets tired, fall asleep, you know.
Hmm.
Um But if I'm just in like a dead quiet room in the dark, it's like a 50-50 shot that I'm gonna like fixate on it and be like, "Ugh," you know?
Yeah.
But it really doesn't get to me that much because quite honestly, I don't I'm lucky that I don't have a 9 to 5 job. So essentially, if I can't sleep, I just stay up. I don't care. So if I can't sleep, whatever, I'm getting up, I'm going downstairs, I'm gonna work on some art or watch a movie or something, hang out with my cat, I don't care.
Fuck yeah.
Um, you know, but also like I tend to stay up pretty late anyway. By the time I actually get to bed, I'm pretty fucking exhausted usually,
Yeah.
so it's just gonna pass out. However, the morning is the worst. That's where I'll be very honest with you. It's it's not fun
Oh.
because it's it's relentlessly disorienting because you wake up, you're not aware of it in your sleep, right? You're not aware of it in your dreams. So very often I'll be dreaming or I'll just be in deep sleep and it's not there. And then the second I wake up and open my eyes, it's like a scene in a movie where like the bomb goes off and you just hear that ringing and it immediately disorients your awareness and you're just kind of like,
Fuck.
you know. So it's a very strange sensation to wake up to every day. And I've actually had this conversation with other people who have it and they completely agree that the morning is way worse.
Damn.
Because it just is like it's like it takes me, yeah, I would say like a good full hour before I feel like normal,
Like
so
acclimating to it.
yeah, just like
like
just like
oh God, dude.
it's almost like subconscious because you know it's one thing in the immediate like aftermath of the onset, like where I'm talking through it with my wife and like, just like, oh man, this is really tough or, whatever. But once you're like really through that phase and you're like back in regular life and it's just like, yep, this is it. You have this, like it's always there. Um, you're not talking about it. So you're waking up, you're just having a regular morning and it's just it's telling your body and like it's really just telling your nervous system that something is wrong. So it's like misfiring and kind of telling you, oh, like what? And you're just kind of like instantly met with sort of a shitty feeling,
Oh,
you have to really like push through that. And essentially my solution for that is sort of just like um trying to disconnect from my emotions for that first hour and just be almost like very zen as much as possible. Kind of like empty,
yeah.
just like calm, accepting, and just like doing what I need to do. Um, I've gone through like a period of time now recently where I've been getting up pretty early. And I'll have this actually my wife and I kind of been taking turns like getting up before each other and we leave the dogs in bed with the other person. So it's like I'm up early, dogs are in bed with her. I'm down here drinking coffee, early morning time, hanging out with our cat. He loves the special attention. He's in here with me right now. He's like behind the laptop.
Oh,
But like so get some good like hang time with him, read, read a little bit, just have quiet like just centering quiet time. And that's really helpful for me with it. I think just really not having to interact at all during that period is very helpful for me. Um, and then other times it's just like it is what it is. I might feel kind of shitty or just feel, you know, it just kind of puts a weird negative gloss over everything for a very small period of time. And then it's gone and I forget about it.
so when you said you talked about people, you said you've talked to other people that have tinnitus.
Yeah.
Has that's helped you, right? But like,
Oh,
has that
yeah.
been fans or like people of your art that have talked to you, or how have you met these people or talked to other people with tinnitus?
Well, so that was an interesting thing that came out of me doing the show. So the show was called A Noisy Mind, and I thought that was real clever.
Yeah,
I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna talk about my neurodivergence
yeah,
and this weird noise in my head.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and then also simultaneously on top of that, I overlaid sort of my history with music. So it was like all encompassing. But so the show had a few very distinct pieces to it. Like there was a written piece that I did that was literally just sort of like a stream of consciousness of like kind of a day in the life. And a lot of it, I'll send it to you.
Please.
A lot of it is my neurodivergent struggle of like constant distraction, constant overwhelm, you know, um, the laundry is stacking up, the mail is stacking up, the dishes are piling up, the bills that you're trying to pay, you forgot your password, you have to call, like just this all is sort of like monotonous, just this shit that a lot of people take for granted as far as like how this modern world has really not set up for people with these kind of brains. It's very difficult. And so a lot of it's running through that, but I'm always going back to the ringing. The ringing's always kind of cutting in and out of the narrative. And and so um so there's the written piece and then there's one piece that's very that is really was a bit of like like a talk, a centerpiece was I so I found basically the frequencies that my tinnitus makes,
What?
and I created, basically by doing like a mirroring, and putting it in my one ear while I was making the tone in my program, and then I would send it to the other ear, and once I could get it to fully disappear, I knew that that's the frequencies I was missing, right?
Wow, dude.
So I made those frequencies, and I made basically encapsulated my tinnitus, and I put it on this iPod, and I mounted the iPod and framed it, and then just had it continuously running with headphones so anyone could just pick it up and listen to it. Um,
Wow.
and so it was interesting to talk to people there at the opening who like definitely had struggled with it as well and really could really appreciate it. But it was funny because like the first conversation I had where someone really knew what I was talking about and was like, and like they were like almost in tears like when they read my thing, because they're
Wow.
also neurodivergent too with tinnitus, was my uncle. So it
No
was,
way.
yeah, it was crazy. Like, because he actually, he was in a string band for a really long time. He was always around really loud noise. Um, and he developed really bad tinnitus, and he actually has it in both ears. So,
Oh
um,
shit.
so anyway, like he was just like, he just was like, "Hey, come here." He's like, he like pointed to the like written thing. He's like, "This is my life." He's like, "This is it." Like, and then like, so we immediately connected on that, and he was the first person to tell me and kind of reaffirm the morning thing. He was just like, "Yeah, the morning is so hard."
Mm.
Um, but then yeah, through the um through the time period after the show, had a lot of people reach out to me and talk about the work. Definitely a lot of people, a lot of neurodivergent people, but definitely a lot of friends who, it's kind of interesting to find out that there are a lot of people I know, obviously, like no surprise there, in the music industry, different musicians that I know who have been sort of quietly struggling, like some of them really badly actually with tinnitus, and some in very debilitating ways that has caused them to really basically have to stop playing. I mean, um, which is crazy because, like like I described to you, I'm kind of lucky in that way. I've found a way to continue to do that, but also I've had to do it very carefully. Like, anyone that saw this day forward noticed that I was wearing isolation cans, while I was playing, but they didn't realize that I also had in-ears in underneath them, that were in very low volume. So,
Yeah.
so not only did I have very low volume in-ears that were sealing my ears already, I had isolation cans on top of that shit. So it was like really very, very minimal damage, exposure to noise. But yeah, some people just, especially people who have dealt with it directly from hearing loss, I think, because a lot of people that have it from hearing loss can be a thing that continues to get like rapidly worse for some people.
Yeah.
Um, Luckily, I haven't been experiencing that. But yeah, so there's a lot of people out there, that a lot more people than you would expect. And I did try some stuff like, I immediately tried having a hearing aid, because supposedly, hearing aids are one of the first things that people do usually, because the newer ones can match the frequency and sort of eliminate the ringing. I found that to be true. However, it was so disorienting for me. I mean,
Uh,
um, I think I would, again, I don't know if this is like, maybe it's a mixture. I would say it's probably a neurodivergent thing, but also a mixture of the fact that I've spent so much of my life, closely listening to frequency range, closely paying attention to, um, sound. And so
mhm.
putting in a hearing aid that it just sounded so strange. There was like very little low end. Everything was very kind of like tinty coming through. The ringing was gone, but the way that I was hearing was very bizarre. And then yeah, like I lasted like not even I don't know. I didn't make it out of the parking lot, basically. I went to the thing, they put it in, we did a bunch of test balls in there. I was like, okay, this is very weird, but I'll try it. Um, and I remember like walking out to my car, and it was like I was like listening to a recording of myself walking to my car. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
weird. That'd be
Like
weird, man.
it was
Yeah,
very
that'd
strange.
be.
And then I got in my car and I pulled up my GPS,
Uh,
and I turned on the GPS directions, and then the voice that was coming out of my GPS started having interference in the
uh,
in the thing, and I was like, "No way!" Like
yeah,
I went back in, and I was like, "Take it out! I'm not doing it. No way!"
yeah.
So they were like, "Well, if you ever want to come back," I was like, I probably will, but probably not until I'm like 70 or something. So I don't know. You probably won't be here. um, like, um, but yeah. So anyway,
And technology, what will technology be by then too for that stuff? I don't know.
that's the other thing. There's a lot of experimental therapies out there right now. There's one that I already got technically approved for, but it's very expensive. So
Hmm.
I'm sort of waiting. Um, I mean, it's not so there's stem cell, which is significantly more.
Hmm.
Um, I found out that that would be like roughly like 15 grand or something like that. I was like, okay. And there's no
Wow.
guarantees. Like you could do all that, and I'd have to go to Florida for it, and it's considered experimental, so your health insurance doesn't cover anything. And then it's like 15 grand. It's
Yeah.
3 sessions. I would have to like be there for a while doing it, and then there's no guarantees. So it might not work, and then you could also have complications from it. And if I had complications from it, my health insurance wouldn't cover anything that I would have to do. So it's pretty scary. Um, then there's this other treatment that is it's non-invasive, and it's this essentially this therapy where it's this contraption they made that it's a very specific frequency, um, like a headphone, very specific custom headphone thing that they made that's also connected to this thing that you put on your tongue. Really weird, looks super bizarre, but it's a dual stimulation therapy. You do it for a half hour. You do it for a half hour twice a day for I think like 6 weeks, and you go in to see the doctor like I think twice during that time, and that's only like 4 grand, and that's the thing that I got approved for. They only do it for people who like match certain criteria, because right now the efficacy of it is like extremely high. So like I think it's something insane. Like 85% of the people who do it see a reduction of 50% or more of their symptoms.
Wow.
So it's really
Wow.
high and supposedly really effective, and it's not something you have to do for your whole life. You basically do it in this concentrated period of time,
Yeah.
and it's supposedly some people have full remission of symptoms.
Wow,
So
dude.
um in the next couple of years, like I don't know. I think because because tinnitus is actually now a highly documented side effect of the COVID vaccine, and also a highly documented symptom of long COVID. So there's way more people struggling with it now. There was already a lot of people struggling with it, but now there's like a shit ton of people. So it's become kind of an urgent thing for them to figure out more effective therapies for. So I have faith. I have faith in science. Um, I feel like there's going to be there's going to be, if not a cure, there's going to be some really effective therapies coming out in the next few years. And probably, I would say, I also have faith that the more people that need it, the more therapies will be available, the more likely health insurance will cover it. Like it just takes time. Um, in between now and then, I'm kind of okay with the ringing. I've made peace with it. It's fine. You know, it
Dang,
is what it
man.
is. Um,
But to the like younger crowd out there, like especially guys being in bands at our age now, like wear
oh
your
God,
fucking head, like wear earplugs
Pro-
if you wear headphones, like
protect your hearing.
oh my God, man. I like how many, you know, I don't think it was until even probably 2017 that I started actually like doing like wearing earplugs and like, oh, I'm in a room with a drummer, I should wear earplugs. Or like my friend's in town, I'm gonna sit right behind him while he plays drums with no earplugs. Like what the hell am I doing? Like
I mean, that's the thing that's kind of interesting is that like, it doesn't affect everybody who has exposure to loud noise, but it certainly affects a lot of people, especially depending on the levels of noise that you're being exposed to. For me, it's still kind of a mystery because of the timing of it. There, so it's interesting. So it happened, it came on, I would say, within days of my first COVID booster.
oh
Um,
shit. Oh
and
shit.
and I didn't really think much about it because like I mentioned, um there was so much going on in my life at the time. I was so stressed out about the band and um I didn't really think about that. But as I was waiting for my appointment, my first audiologist appointment, I started just kind of Googling all kinds of stuff. And then um, I stumbled upon a Reddit that was just all of these people like who had gotten like a very sudden onset of asymmetrical tinnitus after their shot or after having COVID. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck? But it was also, it was kind of like a really sensitive topic because it was really as like the anti-vax movements were really starting to like take hold of the country in a way that they hadn't before, just in a really really negative way. And I'm like very pro science, I'm very pro vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And even if this is from the vaccine, like I accept the fact that first of all side effects happen. Second of all, like COVID is way fucking worse, especially the strains we were dealing with then. They were straight up fucking killing people.
Mm-hmm.
I know many people who got hospitalized. I know people who lost family members. Like it
Mm-hmm.
is not a fucking joke. And me, I have like various different like immuno deficiencies that run in my family. I've never been diagnosed, but like I show symptoms of things like mast cell and a few other things. So really wasn't fucking around. I really wanted that vaccine and I really wanted the booster because I wanted to not be afraid to just fucking live normal life. And so it gave me that, you know what I mean? And so anyway, it just made me kind of it put me in a bind because I wanted to talk about it. But I also didn't first of all, I didn't want to discourage other people from
Yeah.
from from getting a booster or getting vaccinated. But I also didn't want people to think I was anti-vax.
Yeah.
Um, so I was kind of like a little hush hush about it. And I remember even like I could feel the uneasiness in my family when I kind of mentioned like, oh, this could be, and they're like, oh no, like is he gonna go down the rabbit hole, I was like, no, I'm like, I'm still gonna continue to get my boosters, like I still believe in it. But anyway, I brought it up to the audiologist that first time, and and she was like, I don't think so. She was like, I haven't heard anything about that, like it's not a thing. fast forward to my last checkup, um, they brought it up. So
Oh
it was
shit.
just really funny. It was a different person who I saw, but I went to the same office, and they're like, this is a highly documented side effect of the COVID vaccine now. It's very possible that this could have happened. And I was like, yeah, I know. I mean, I brought this up last time I was here, and actually I was told that it was probably not the case. And they're like, oh, interesting. They're like, yeah, well, we're learning more every day. And I was like, yep, true. Um, but so I was a little nervous, to be honest, to get that next booster. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, I really hope it's not like doesn't make it worse. But like, nothing happened. I thought maybe I was like still going through this period of time where I was like, is it getting better or am I just getting used to it, right? And then I did have a feeling that after I got that second booster, um, that it got worse or more intense. But I was like, I feel like this is psychosomatic. And sure enough, like very soon after, I felt completely like the same again. And I was just like, um, yeah, I don't think I've had two boosters since then, and I'm fine. No increase or change or anything. But it's definitely interesting. Um, you know, like
Yeah, because everyone like you can be pro-vaccine, pro-science, and all that, but you could be that like small percentage of people that gets a bad reaction to a vaccine, and
absolutely.
then you're like, "Fuck, I'm demonized because I'm like I'm trying to talk
Yeah,
about it." No, I'm really that person, but
yeah,
like, yeah, oh
exactly.
man, dude.
Well, that's why I tried like every time now that I talk about it,
Oh,
I try to make sure people understand that like, hey, like just because this potentially happened to me, like I still am actually very grateful for the vaccine um and I am, very very convinced of the fact that I could have very easily gotten gotten a case of COVID and had long COVID symptoms that were way worse than that.
yeah.
Because I know people that got COVID before they got vaccinated, and they have long COVID. That's pretty fucking rough. But you know, um,
Oh,
weird world we're living in. This is Benny.
Benny. This is a
Yeah,
second cat on BrewFOs. This is awesome. Hi, Benny.
he's the man. He's been with me for I think he's 13 now.
Oh,
Um, I've had him. He's lived in like 3 states and like 6 different places with me. He's a total beast. Like never any fear. Just like anywhere we'd move, he'd just like pop out of his carrier and be like, "Cool,
all
all
right.
right."
What's this
Like,
place? Yeah.
yeah, all right, yeah. He's very like he has like definitely has like dog vibes.
Red.
He loves our dogs. He hangs out with them all the time. They're like obsessed with him. They like think he's like a god because he can go places that they can't. So they're like, "How did you get up there, man?" And he's just like what I do. I don't know.
Dude,
Um,
I got a dog that's a cat dog, pretty much. Like you
nice.
can knock on the door and ring the doorbell, bang, just no barking, nothing. It's like what's going
Yeah,
on here, you
this
know?
guy he straight up comes to his name. Like he'll like, you know, he immediately knows when we come home, so he runs to the door, he greets us as soon as we get in, and then like when we go up to bed or something like that, and we're just like, "Where's Benny?" And like my wife would be like, "Benny," and all of a sudden it's like a minute, and he's like, and he just like, and like jumps in, and he's like hilarious, dude. He's definitely an enigma.
Dude, so uh real quick to just I think I don't even know what time it is. How
That's
are we doing
fine.
on time? We're
I'm
all
good.
right.
I'm good
Okay.
to do. I can go as long as you want.
Dude, as with neurodivergence,
Yeah.
so are you you're ADHD, but do you have anything else, or is
Um,
that where
I
you're at?
I I I am autistic. I am also autistic. I'm self-diagnosed autistic, but
Okay.
my wife got diagnosed 2 years ago now. We just
Okay.
celebrated the 2 year anniversary of her diagnosis. But so we went through that whole process together of her getting her diagnosis. And so throughout the whole thing, I had to go through all the questionnaires with her. I had to fill out the questionnaire as her partner. And then also, like, I was witness to all of the just everything as it all went down. And simultaneously, as that was happening, eh, you know, being the person that I am, I was obsessively reading like everything I could get my hands on about autism and um, learning quite a bit that I didn't know. And all these bells are going off like, oh my God, like just so many distinct indications that were like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna say that this is a very high possibility for myself too, but let's focus on you. And then when she got a positive diagnosis, I was like, okay, like this is making everything make so much more sense now. And
Yeah.
the more the more I got um embedded in just sort of the current literature all about it, the current, the community, and really becoming aware of, the spectrum, and
Hmm.
understanding how unique it presents in every person. Um, I felt comfortable, self-diagnosing. I'm going to be pursuing, um, an actual diagnosis as well, but it's very expensive and, um, being self-employed doesn't necessarily make it that easy. At least not around here. Like I think our getting her diagnosis cost like almost 3 grand. So it was, um, and it was, the deal. It's like the process, the time it takes up, and then, um, there is certainly an emotional component to it as well. And,
Hmm.
um, yeah, so I guess I'm okay with like for now, um, being self-diagnosed, and I'm also comfortable with like, neurodivergent as the term that I use most of the time. Because most people don't understand what ADHD is.
Yeah.
They're like, what is that? You know? And then you have to explain it or whatever.
That's what my
Um,
wife is. My wife's ADHD.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife's autistic, but she's like very leaning in very close to being self-diagnosed ADHD too. Like she's like, wait a second. Like we have this like kind of inverse thing going on where, we can kind of see different traits in each other and understand like, oh, okay, like the ADHD is far more like present in me than the autism,
Hmm.
or at least it presents way more overtly, and kind of more traditionally, I guess you could say. Like every single fucking ADHD meme I see, I'm just like, oh my God, it's like dead ringer. But
Hmm.
it's kind of the same thing for her for autism. Like like she really presents. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing to me that I never really thought about it prior to that. But the thing is that, um, and she's comfortable sharing all this stuff all the time. But like, like when you're like a trauma survivor, like trauma presents, especially PTSD, um, presents in a way that can really mimic a lot of autistic traits, and um, there were a lot of things that she, for years, was going to therapy trying to cure herself from, like which is kind of heartbreaking to think about. And I think
Hmm.
that was difficult for her to think about. Thinking about these things about her personality that she thought were, because of trauma that she could heal herself from, and then realizing, oh no, this is me. Like this is this is how I am. And like so there's one part of that that's a relief. You're like, oh, I don't have to try to fix this part of me anymore. But the other part of it is like kind of devastating because you're realizing it at such a late stage in your life, and you're realizing all the years that you spent kind of wondering like why, like why is it like this?
Mm-hmm.
And so like my experience is a little different. Like I got diagnosed ADHD like when I was like 13 or something, and it was on that first real major wave of ADHD diagnosis. So like I was a Ritalin kid, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
I was one of very few people in my class who had the diagnosis and who was medicated. Slowly but surely over the years, like more and more, obviously. But like when I was in middle school, like I didn't really know anyone else who was. It took like maybe 2 or 3 years, like, but until I got to high school, then I was like, oh, I'm not the only one going to the nurse for my meds like anymore, and and so it was a really interesting journey for me. Um, Especially now looking back, it's kind of similar to the fucking bizarro um, you know, UAP encounter stuff
Yeah.
where the memory is so tricky, so slippery. Like I start thinking about it and I'm like, did I ever really have an emotional reaction to that? Like, did I process it at all? Like, what? Like, I don't remember ever actually feeling inside my body at that time, like sadness around it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember, it's probably attributed to like, credit to my parents for however they approached it with me. They didn't make me feel super weird about it or anything. They were just like, hey, we're gonna like take you to get tested. Talk to this therapist for a little bit, and we might be able to get you some meds that are just gonna help you in school. And they broke it down very simply for me, and because they both had very heavy like psychology backgrounds, it just didn't weird me out at all. Like, my dad was a psychology professor. My
Wow.
mom, my mom's a social worker, but she was kind of um, like like she's like the boss lady at this nonprofit for people. Like essentially she works with families who have severe autism and also like people who have like all types of different mental disabilities. And
Wow.
um so they're like very like psychological like jargon was very normal all throughout my whole childhood. I was always around anytime I went to my mom's work with her, I was always around mentally disabled people. I was always around people who had just different brains and different needs. And my mom was very like just like so incredible, like in terms of the way she normalized that for me. Like I never blinked, and I never thought it was weird. I always was sort of in school, like drawn to anyone who like might have something like that, anyone who was in special ed, anyone who seemed like they were just different. Um, I was always like baffled why they would get picked on, why people would
Mm-hmm.
like, kind of single them out and stuff. I started realizing like how cruel the world was slowly, but like, as far as my exposure to it from them was like super healthy and really positive. So I didn't really think anything about it. And then I do feel like, you know, over time, as I'm going, just like going through that portal of teenage angst and figuring out who the fuck I am. And I think there were definitely times where I could feel the medication more than others, and I'd be like, I don't know if I like this anymore, like, or I would sort of like question it, and and then there'd be times where I would just like not take it and I would feel crazy, and I was like, I don't know if that's a good thing. And, there were definitely times where I think like I probably needed adjustments of my dosage or something, because I definitely started using drugs like pretty young, like, and pretty close to after I got diagnosed. So, um, a lot of like what I would consider self-medication and trying to just feel well, I mean, it was definitely part experimentation, but then another part of it was like really trying to feel comfortable in my skin, like trying
Yeah.
to feel just trying to like, you know, feel normal functioning. Um, which, spoiler alert, still not feeling normal in my functioning ever. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think um I it wasn't until probably like college that I started to really understand that something was very different in terms of how my brain worked and how my needs were very different. And they were really starting to become more pronounced, and I actually talked about this a little bit yesterday. I was talking to a guy. He's doing like a story on like a 25, like records that came out in 2000. So he's doing a 25-year anniversary piece on all these different records, and we were talking about um, the second "This Day Forward" record, which came out right around the time where I was like in my first year of college. Uh, I went to community college like nearby here, Philadelphia, Burbs, and I was telling this story about how so again with the recorder, I still had it, and I started utilizing it a lot for lectures because it was just like really impossible for me to absorb everything in these classes, especially some of them were like 3 hours long, like, and I'd just be like, you know, holy shit, like this is a whole nother level of information processing and yeah, just like I was not prepared for just like how intense some of those classes were. Anyway, so like my mom definitely like advocated for me or she like really just encouraged me like you need to like go talk to them one on one and you know tell them about your ADHD, tell them how you might need some things in terms of just like whatever, like, because basically I told her I'm like, I have multiple professors who have a no recording policy, and I don't know why, but like that's a thing. And I was just like kind of bitching at her, and she's like, you need to just go talk to them. So I went. All my professors were cool except for one, and this guy who was my art history professor was like such a dick about it. I don't know why, but he was like so adamant about not being recorded. And I was just like, I'm not gonna like I don't know why, but like I'm not understanding why you're uncomfortable with this, but like this is really just for me to be able to absorb the information. And he's just like, I was like, I have a learning disability. Like this is something I need. And he was like, I don't care. And I was like,
Oh,
I was like, okay. I was like, well, I don't really know what I'm gonna do. He's like, I guess you're gonna have to learn how to pay attention. And I was
oh
just
my
like,
God, dude.
I was like, wow, okay. So I kept recording him anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I not only did I record him, but I put him on the opening track of our record.
No. Sorry, that's so
So
good. That's so
uh
good.
yeah, and I
That's
named the
awesome.
we named the album after something he says in the sample. So
Oh, that's
but
great.
the thing that was funny though was just that like it was totally complimentary. Like I was an art major at the time. Eventually I dropped out and I never finished my art degree, but um, yeah, I wound up getting a degree in communications or film communications later. But anyway, I was a fine art major and he was my art history professor and I found this stuff super interesting. Like I really loved it, but it was just like these were like really intensive 3-hour classes, and it was a lot. But he had a really cool cadence the way he talked, and like I liked it a lot. It was interesting to me, and he started talking about he said it's called the transient effects of light on water, and he was talking about how this whole period of time where painters started to try to capture this like very like difficult to capture effect that light has on water, like the reflection, but also the way it moves and all this different stuff. And I just thought it was the coolest concept. And it kind of had this metaphorical connection for me where it felt like kind of like what we were trying to do in the studio, trying to capture the energy of like live music. So I was like, what if we called the record Transient Lights Effect, Transient Effects of Light on Water? And like the Mike, our singer, like loved it. And so we called it that. But there's like right after the first song, right before the second song starts, like he comes in and he's just talking about the transient effects of light and water. Uh and you can kind of like he sounds cool, but you can also kind of hear how much of a dick he is in the sample. He's
Yeah,
pretty funny.
yeah. Dude, that's so cool. That's so funny, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it's shitty, and then it's cool how you turned it into art, though.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the journey, like people, neurotypical people, and I'm gonna sound like a baby, but like they just really don't understand, and that's not their fault. Um, but there was a lot um, there was a lot to push through. There was a lot of resistance to push through, especially um, you know, that first 10 years, like just there was I mean, there still is. I mean, we've come a long way, right?
Hmm.
Like as a society, but man, there was a lot of people that were just like, this shit's made up. It's not
Right.
real. It's just an excuse to put kids on drugs, blah, blah, blah. Like parents who aren't like bad parents that don't know how to control their kids, like all kinds of stuff. And, and of course it is like kind of controversial, like giving fucking amphetamines to kids. It's a little weird, but ultimately, and I've gone through a very long journey of like, medicated, unmedicated. Like I've gone on and off a bunch of times. But I'm medicated again, and man, I mean, the difference is pretty profound. I mean,
Hmm.
in terms of just being able to function, um, I still struggle even with the medication. But it certainly is far better than when I'm not. And luckily I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy for a long time, but like I get to sort of unravel some of that, like the complications of, like the shame that can come along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Not just being neurodivergent, but the shame of being medicated, the shame of needing medication, the shame of like, um, you know, I can't even tell you how many times I've had to, especially like because I've moved a lot over the last decade. Um, Moving is just like a nightmare when it comes to medication because you have to reestablish care, you have to reestablish your prescription. People really treat you like you're drug seeking. It's very like because things have gotten so kind of wild with regulations and understandably so. Like I get it, it's a controlled substance, but like damn, like they have made it way, 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 way more difficult than it needs to be for people who have a diagnosis already to just keep their fucking prescription. So, but like that's very for like people don't understand. Like, yes, uh I get it. Like for a neurotypical person, they're like, what's the big deal? Make the appointment, get the script. It's just you and I know everything in between that very simple thing it's just infinite complexities, infinite distractions, infinite minute hurdles that keep you from that happening. And not to mention, oh fuck, I only have 2 days of medication left, and now it's Friday, and my doctor's office is closed. And like, what am I gonna do? I forgot.
Yeah.
Fuck, I'm gonna run out. Like, um, it's just something you have to always stay on top of. And like again, like neurotypical people are just like, be an adult, remember how to do things. It's like,
Be normal.
motherfucker, like, it's like, do you want to fucking see this shit? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, motherfucker, I am an adult. That's how I adult. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I have like 1,000 fucking alarms
That's
every
my
day.
map. That's my
Yeah.
map for the day, you know?
Yeah. Like, so
That's
very,
my
very,
Google Maps.
yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I am truly fucking lost if I don't have that. Even my calendar is not enough, not even. Like,
Yeah.
basically, every day I wake up, the first thing I have to do is look at my calendar. What do I have going on? Then I have to set additional alarms for each of those things to go off. Um, and, you know, not boo-hooing about it, but it's truly, this last experience of going to I had to get re-diagnosed, and essentially, I'm sure I could have like there are other things I could have done. I could have like gotten medical records from my previous neurologist back in Oregon, but it had been years since I'd been medicated, and I felt weird calling them up because the last interaction I had was bad. It was like he like went on the way I came off of medication was he went on vacation, didn't tell me. I got stuck
Oh
with
God.
my script running out. Then he had to try to call another neurologist to write me a script. I called that neurologist and he was like, "I don't feel comfortable doing it. I don't know you." And he treated me like an addict or something. Yo, bro, what are you doing? Get down. Get down. Get
Benny.
down. Come
He's
on.
Benny's
Come
doing
on.
yoga in the back. It's cool, man.
Come on. I'll give you a little snack. God damn, you maniac. Um, um, so like anyway, like because I didn't feel comfortable doing all that and I didn't feel comfortable then having that awkward conversation where I tell my regular doctor, oh, like I've been diagnosed ADHD my whole life, but I've gone on and off the medication, haven't been on it in years. Can you write me a script for Adderall? It's like kind of awkward. So instead of doing that, I was like, I'll just get a new diagnosis. So I went to a neurologist and it was just like, oh, so triggering. Like, because even though like he's like, yeah, we're gonna need 4 sessions to establish your diagnosis. And they were like $200 sessions. Um, and basically they're like interview sessions. So he's asking me questions as if I haven't been diagnosed ADHD my whole life. So I'm telling him in every session, like my history and everything. And it's like he's omitting everything where I'm like, yeah, I've already been on this medication a million times. And he's like, so let me tell you about the medication. There's different, and I'm like, okay, man, this is fucked up. Um, and then at the end, he's like, well, I think, we've established that, you have ADHD.
Oh my
And I'm
God,
like,
man.
and then he tried to tell me, I was like, listen, you're awesome, but I was laying it on a little thick because he's definitely not awesome. But like he was like, I, I was like, you're awesome, but I can't afford you, man. Like I can't. I was like, the last time I was seeing a neurologist, he wrote me three months worth of scripts, and basically they were dated so that I couldn't get them until the normal time. And then I'd come back every 3 months and have a session. He's like, "Well, I don't feel comfortable doing that. You have to see me every month." And I was like, "Dude, I can't add in 200 extra something dollars to see you every month on top of what I'm doing."
Yeah, they're like
And
let's
so he's like, "Well, I don't." feel comfortable giving you. And I was like, well, okay, so what are we gonna do here? And I was like, what about my my general my family doctor? Like, can I move the script over to her? And he's like, I don't know. And he basically just tried to like get me to not do that. So I was like, fuck this. And I called her and was like, hey, so this is a situation. And she's like, oh yeah, it's fine. I was like, fuck. Okay. So like I had to call him and be like, can you transfer over all my information? And he still tried to resist. And my mom was like, that is illegal. He can't do that. So I was like, all right, well, if he doesn't do it for me. So it took him like, I don't know, like 2 weeks to finally send over all the stuff, but
Fuck,
eventually got all
dude.
figured out. It's totally smooth now. My regular doctor is awesome. She's great. And thank God like that she's like she's very like neurodivergent friendly. So but I was like, man, like I just started thinking about like just people, like what people have to go through.
I
You
was
know what I
just gonna
mean?
say that, like, how many people like don't even have like, or it's worse. You know, it's worse
Yeah.
than your experience. And your experience made me want to like tear my. I was like,
Yeah.
ah.
Well, it's like, dude, like how many people just can't afford that to begin with? Just to establish my diagnosis, it
Oh
was
my
a lot
God.
of money. And then on top of that, you got to pay for the medication. So it's like, damn, dude, like it just really made me feel for other neurodivergent people out there and
Yeah.
what they have to go through. And I'm just like, damn, like we really need to fix this shit because it's pretty terrible. Um, but it's like it's bad enough that like the world is just really not set up for us, but like on top of that, just to get the things you need, it is they make you do all this shit that's like literal neurodivergent kryptonite. It's like I can't fucking do that.
Well,
That's
dude, and we're two white men talking about this. Like,
oh, exactly,
imagine
man.
for women too.
Oh, dude.
Women and
Oh,
women of
I
color.
yeah,
It's
I was
like,
like, man, what if I was black? I would have been absolutely fucked. Like
yeah.
so many different times, and it just crushed me to fucking think about that shit. Just like, oh God, it is so nightmarish. And if it's nightmarish for people who are extremely privileged, it's so much worse for
Hmm.
other people. So
Dude,
yeah.
no, thanks for sharing all that too, because I have my little notebook here, but like I write down little things. I'm like, I have to talk to Colin about all these things. One of them was psychedelics, but
Mm.
definitely I needed to talk to you about neurodivergence because yeah, your handle is ADHD, and I was like wondering about it, and I'm like, okay, I want to know a little bit more about that. But um, can we segue into psychedelics?
Yeah,
Is that
please
cool,
do.
real quick?
Yeah, yeah,
Just
of course.
I'm finishing this book right now, which is it's so crazy, but it's called the I don't know if you've heard of it, the Immortality Key by
No.
Bram Marescu. But he's basically like he was on Joe Rogan's, and I saw him on Joe Rogan. I was like he like was you know talking about his book, and he basically goes back into like uh he went to Brown and like uh was learning about classics in ancient Greece, and his basic thing is just like how they were all just basically like doing you know uh psychedelics,
Yep.
and that Christianity kind of took it away, and that's
Mm-hmm.
his aim. But he's saying that now with artifacts and stuff, they're finding that the early Christians before Rome was pretty much like screw this. They were like when you like communion or whatever, the wine
Mm-hmm.
would have like or the beer or whatever they were taking would have like psychedelics in it to get you to
Yep.
God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I know you're more versed in psychedelics than I am. Um, I'm a you know I I haven't really I've done mushrooms twice. That's it.
Okay.
And that was an amazing experience. It was by myself. I took a notebook, I jotted everything down. It was
Mm-hmm.
life changing.
Yeah.
There's now research from Johns Hopkins and like NYU where like the majority of people like you were talking about that treatment for tinnitus, like
Mm-hmm.
85%. It's almost like the same thing. Like with psychedelics, it's It's like 85% of people, they'll do it once and it'll change their life forever.
Yeah.
So just your experiences with it, like what, I don't know, I guess I just want you to talk about it, like your
Yeah.
experiences with psychedelics.
Sure. Um, wow. I mean, I
Where do I
think,
start?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of overlap um with the neurodivergent conversation, I think like in terms of um feelings of like alienation and feeling like um you know very at very young age like really just trying to like figure out life, figure out identity, figure out like a lot of that deep stuff, but like knowing that or feeling that there was something different about me, but then also feeling that there was something beyond um the surface of everyday life. And you know um I think my introduction to psychedelics as a concept was probably something very simple, like that. I think it was like the movie The Doors or something.
Hmm.
um and just seeing them on acid and being like, what the fuck? Being very intrigued. So yeah, I mean, I took LSD for the first time when I was 14. And
Wow.
so it was maybe a year after I had gotten diagnosed, and a year after, um yeah, maybe a year or two. I don't know. I don't know if I got diagnosed at 12 or 13. I'm pretty sure I got diagnosed at 13. So um yeah, so I was in like 8th grade. I took LSD for the first time, and it just completely changed everything. I think, I mean, it absolutely permanently changed my brain, and permanently changed um like my personality, I think, or just like, yeah, I think it just totally changed me. I would say that I don't know, this is a maybe like an unnecessary disclaimer. I don't know if I would recommend that 14-year-olds drop LSD. Um, but for me, it was definitely a very positive thing. I mean, um, I can see very clearly like distinct changes in behavior and my awareness of so much directly after that first experience. Most specifically, I remember starting to become more confident in being weird, uh, embracing who I was fully, and simultaneously being extremely open to others, even more so than I already was. But being that combination of not caring allowed me to really stretch the amount of people that I could see as like my friend or be like open to. I really wasn't concerned about hierarchy or cliques and stuff like that in that way. And oddly enough, I wound up finding my way into like pretty like, quote unquote like popular kid circles, but I was kind of like all over the place and I was friends with lots of different kinds of people. I guess you could say my main group of friends around that time was like we would probably be considered freaks, but it was mostly like I guess like stoners, and that kind of overlapped a pretty big like wide range of people, from people who are interested in skateboarding, people who are interested in music, people who are just like interested in tuning out and just fucking off and being high all the time. Um, Basically people who were like early criminals, beyond the fact that they're using drugs, but like interested in doing bad things. So like there's this very like all the way this range of people that were like totally straight A students in advanced classes to like this straight F student who is already like shoplifting. Like I was friends with all of them. And so like so immediately I recognized that, or I didn't recognize it maybe at the time, but now looking back on it, I can see a very clear, it made me way more open, and way less judgmental.
Literally
And
expanded your consciousness.
yes,
Your
like just,
consciousness expanding.
yeah. And
Okay.
like at that period of time, I think most people can say that like when you're in middle school and high school, those kind of like hierarchies and cliques and stuff are so prevalent. Like they're so dominating in how you're thinking and how people act and stuff. And it really like just completely dissolved that for me. So that was pretty amazing. Um, I wouldn't, not to say that I didn't struggle throughout that time period, because I definitely did, but it definitely aided me quite a bit. I think it certainly opened up my well, it like exasperated my my internal quality. So like I think I became probably more quiet. Um way I became more like of an observer, less of an, you know, a person doing things and constantly, you know, talking to other people. Um I think that that is probably my natural state. But I was, you know, as we say in neurodivergence circles, I was masked. So
Yeah.
um, I was masking up to that point, trying to be more social than I was comfortable being. And I think, that might sound ironic because I've been just yammering this whole time with
No, it's great.
you.
It's great.
But like this is the situation where I feel comfortable doing this, right? Like in everyday life, normally I am very quiet and very observant usually. So I think it made me unmask in certain areas earlier on than I probably would have otherwise. I think it certainly, you know, ramped up my creative muscle, in terms of like it, again, these are sort of cliche phrases and terms, but it dissolved boundaries in ways that I think otherwise I probably would have struggled against, in terms of thinking about what was possible creatively, but also as I got further along into school and was really thinking about like life. I think it really, my, you know, I wound up doing, I want to say I did LSD before I had graduated high school, probably maybe a dozen times. And maybe a little bit more. I'm not sure. I lost count, but uh, certainly by the time I graduated, I think I felt super comfortable, um, just really thinking outside of the box and realizing that you could kind of create your own reality to some extent, um, especially as a creative. Like that path, there was this sort of like wide open possibility of what could be. Um, I think there are a lot of concepts um, that I absorbed through those experiences. For instance, like birth and death and the cycles of life, the cycles of aging. I became way more aware of death and sort of the yeah, like the kind of the fragile aspect of existence, and also just aware of like generational stuff. My first experience with LSD, as I was co- as I was still tripping, but I was coming down from it, and I came back to my house after being at a friend's house, and I wound up on the couch just like talking to my dad. I was still like definitely hallucinating and like yeah, still definitely feeling it quite a bit, but like not enough so that I was self-conscious to be around him. It's very strange, but I was sitting there having a conversation with him, and as we were talking, he started like changing size. So he was like he seemed really big for a second, and then all of a sudden he started like shrinking like as we were talking. And I was, kind of in all of this watching it happen, but I started perceiving him as becoming a child and then becoming like almost like a baby.
Whoa.
And
Benjamin Button getting
kind of, yeah. But at the same time, what was coming through to me, so I was like we just kept changing. Like I was getting bigger and like older, and then he was getting younger, and then I was getting
Whoa.
older. And it was like this very strange, like kind of like pulsing that was happening throughout us talking. I managed to keep my shit together enough. I mean, he definitely knew that I was experimenting with cannabis at the time, so he probably like if I was acting weird, he probably just wrote it off as that. I really don't know what he was thinking. I asked him about it one time, and he's like, "I don't remember." He's like, "I don't remember that time at all." He's like, "It didn't stick out to me."
Yeah.
Um, but um, but to me, I felt like I was getting a very clear message that um, this cycle of parent child, how you start out and you're just completely dependent on them, and then you go through life, and then eventually they're dependent on you in
Hmm.
some way. And I felt like that was sort of what was being communicated metaphorically in the
Wow.
symbolism.
Yeah.
um like LSD is very like Freudian. Like there's so much symbolism that happens. And even though it's chemically like similar to psilocybin, like the tryptamines are like pretty much like identical in terms of the way that they react in your body. There's so many other components in psilocybin mushrooms that make it a much different experience. Alkaloids and other stuff involved that I mean, for one, mushrooms are usually much shorter. So like mushrooms are like 4 to 6 hours usually. Um, I've had longer for sure, but for the most part, 4 to 6 and you're done. And the peak usually happens earlier on, right? So like LSD is like a marathon. Like
Wow.
it is every time I have taken LSD, it's been at least 12 hours, if not 16, sometimes still feeling it 20 hours later. Um, and the way that it warps time, it just feels way longer than that even. So it's really so even that in itself, that experience is very illuminating as a young person because it changes the way you perceive time.
When you see,
And
we stop right there just real quick. When you say the way you perceive time,
yeah,
I know time's kind of like a made up thing that we just are trying to describe our gravity around the sun, and that's what we experience. But like,
sure.
do you think when you take LSD, then that it's showing you more of like what reality is? Kind of
I
like,
I do think that there is an aspect of that where it is dissolving the conditioning of the way. So obviously, like time is just a measurement, and you're perceiving it based on that measurement that we're aware of. And like you said, there are aspects of it that are uh mathematical, of course, based on the sun and daylight and things of that nature. However, the way that you are perceiving moments and experiences and things that are sort of outside of time, um, it's very different, so you know, experiential time is just a different thing. And many people can talk to you about this without taking any drugs, because there are so many times where we will have an experience where it's like, oh, that feels like, man, it feels like that 3 hours just disappeared, or
Yeah, went
or
by. Yeah.
like or like damn, that was the longest 5 minutes of my life. Like, so the way we perceive time totally changes based on what we're experiencing. um LSD and various psychedelics absolutely change how you experience time in the experience, but I think it also kind of breaks down in a way of how, like, your awareness of time afterwards too. Um, but like, you know, there there have been times, um, there have been experiences I've had that, yeah, like fully broke my concept of what time could be. Like, when I did ayahuasca, for instance, I mean, I had an experience that I shit you not, I truly felt like I had experienced like a full lifetime
Wow.
within this experience. And it had been 4 hours, you know what I mean? Like it truly felt, I mean, if I really was being accurate, it felt like no time. It felt like infinity. Like, it felt like people can't understand infinity though. So like when you say, "Oh, it literally felt like infinity," people don't understand what that means. So like that's why I'm saying a lifetime, because people can understand your whole fucking life up to this period of time, and then double that or something, like into, like, you know, old age, but it was more than that. Like, it was longer than that. It felt like truly like I left any type of shred of resemblance of this lifetime had been completely erased.
Wow.
And it was like a sliver of a fucking memory when I was there, and it all comes back. It all comes rushing back when you come out of it. But in the moment, it was like, yeah, there was no such thing as time. There was no time. Time ceased to exist, and it was just this infinity. Um, and I couldn't even tell you how many times, like, I felt, so I went through this one time loop when I was in this experience, and it truly felt like years. Like, I was in this one loop that just kept repeating itself, and it was years. And I could not, like, my brain could, like, barely comprehend what was happening, because it's so used to, delineating everything based on time. So
Were you
uh,
yourself in that lifetime, or were you somebody
no,
else?
I wasn't. Well, actually, I was many people. So I went through very, like, a huge range of experiences in that trip, but specifically in that time loop, I was like, no, I was nothing. I was no one. I was an awareness. Okay. Um,
Hmm.
and it was interesting because I had some awareness of, so I had kind of dual awareness, right? Part of me was this nothingness that was stuck on this time loop with no body and no head and 360-degree vision, and everything was, it was like I was a fucking pebble on a beach, but there was no beach. There was nothing that I could, like, identify or recognize in that way. However, simultaneously at that time, of nothingness, of being this fucking disembodied pebble on a non-existent beach, I also I started to become aware of this. It was like a B plot of a movie. It was like all of a sudden I had this secondary awareness of myself, and I say myself, but it wasn't myself. It wasn't Colin. I didn't remember anything about my life or who I was or anything about that. But I did remember, or I was aware of the fact that I was in a fucking hut in the middle of the Peruvian jungle and that I had taken a brew and that I was there. That was somewhere in there, but it wasn't connecting to anything about my identity, and I couldn't connect to that. But I was somewhat aware of that part. And then there was a third thing that was overlaid on top of that where so so weird. Infinite loop again. So all of these loops are happening. So imagine, those videos on Instagram that are like drummers and they're like, follow this count. And they'll do one thing in one time signature and then they'll do another thing in another time signature. And you see like the numbers going by and they're doing these like polyrhythms and they're showing you how they can play all these
Yeah,
different
yeah, yeah.
things. That's what's happening in my awareness. Okay. So like I am basically having poly awareness of these different. So one is this non-existent pebble on a non-existent beach with nothingness. Then it's like this slight awareness of the fact it's like an amnesia that I'm in the jungle having taken some brew that someone gave me, but I'm in a pitch black hut. Then there is this other awareness that is a body that is in a rowboat, and it's like I'm in a Disney World ride and I'm going around the circle. You know how like those rides, you're like sitting in the boat and they
Yeah.
just go around. So it kind of felt like that. And I was in this boat and there was like this hallucination, this vision of like fire. So I was I think I was kind of like half tapping into memories from like Pirates of the Caribbean or something. Because like there was like this flickering of like torches kind of. Um and there were candles, there were like lanterns in the Maloka, but like they all get blown out before you start tripping. So like you all take your dose and then they blow out the candle, it goes pitch black, and then they start the Icaro singing, and that's when everything starts the visions start to
Whoa.
happen. So there were no lights in there at all, but I started perceiving these flames, and I was so they're singing the Icaros, and for people who don't know, like, the shamans are singing these Icaros, but they're not just songs, they're not just prayers. They're like technology almost. Like they are they are making the visions happen with these songs that they're singing.
Whoa, weird.
Okay? So there's this trans-dimensional quality to their singing, and they're also like playing like drums, and they have shakers, and it's really it's something else. But so like I was there for like 10 days, and I did 5 ceremonies or something like that. And so over the course of those 5 nights, it's all different Icaros for the most part, and it's like a fucking play almost, like where it's like it's structured. It's almost like it's taking you through this journey, but it's like in different parts. So definitely all of them had different themes and definitely had different vibes, but this one was extremely dark, and it was like they were really coaxing out the purging with these Icaros. It was like we're gonna make you purge, basically, is what this is. Because like, there was just so many times where you're just like, oh my God, like you can like feel everything that they are doing. But anyway, so there was sort of this reprieve where they came out of some of like the really dark loops, and all of a sudden there was sort of like a more, kind of like just a little bit more even tempered. It still felt dark, felt like almost like dark lullaby-ish. And one of the shamans was just like, it was almost like a solo for him. So he was doing this one song, and it was very kind of like sorrowful, but it was really beautiful. But anyway, I was on this boat in this weird Disney ride type of thing, going around in these circles, and he's singing the Sekiro, and um, and I could not understand anything he was saying. It was all in a different language. Um, but I started understanding everything in English, and it was basically he kept saying life is a river, just kept talking about life being a river and all these different ways in which, like, he basically started describing this like loop that I was having. It was like
Whoa, dude.
the song like really became like completely about this entire loop that I was having, and it started to feel like it was like, and this is a thing I felt multiple times in different ways in these ceremonies, where the song started to feel like this, like the song about my life. It felt like a song that I had heard so many times in my life, but I had never heard it ever, consciously anyway. Um, and it felt like all of a sudden, like in a movie, where like the theme song happens again, and you're like, oh, it's the theme. That's like what this was.
Weird.
So he was singing this song, what felt like directly to me. And and I was going around this boat, like going around this loop, and I could see him. Like he was like at times he was just literally like right above me, singing right to me. And he might have been, for all I know. Um, but I wouldn't have seen him because it was pitch black in there. So it was so wild. But so this is where this is where the next narrative gets overlaid, and it's so intense. So basically, when you drink ayahuasca, you, at least like for these types of places, they're very particular about the way you space out your meals and the way you space out your liquids and stuff. Because there's purging involved and stuff. Like you eat breakfast very early, and you're supposed to hydrate throughout the day a lot. But then you drink ayahuasca for dinner, and then basically you don't have anything until the next morning. Um, you can have crackers and stuff afterwards if you really want to, but most of the time you're not even thinking about food afterwards. You're just like totally like, what the fuck? That was
What just
insane.
happened? Yeah.
Yeah. But so anyway, I had overhydrated that day for sure, and I drank a little bit too much water prior to that ceremony. And so I'm sitting there in the middle of that, and like before I really went into my visions, I immediately knew, I was like, fuck, I'm gonna need to piss. Like, and the thing is like if I mean, unless you take a total baby dose, like for me, this shit totally paralyzed me. Like it totally knocked me on my ass. Like I was not able to move really. I was not able to get up mid ceremony and just be like, I'm gonna just walk to the bathroom. Some people seem to be able to do that. The one time I tried it, it was like so nightmarish. I was just like, nope, I'm good. I'm gonna wait. So that time though, however, I really needed to pee before we barely even started. But I just kind of like, it very neurodivergent of me. I was like, I'll deal with this later.
Yeah.
Like, I'll figure this out later. And sure enough, it came back to haunt me in the middle of the ceremony, and I'm like really starting to become aware of the fact that I need to pee. And that was like the consciousness that knew I was in a hut, but didn't know who I was. And it was like, um okay, fuck, I need to pee. Well, how? I can't walk. There's no way I can walk, and we're pitch black. So the only way I can get to the bathroom is if I ask for help because there's helpers walking around and they're always like kind of there. And one of my plights as a human being is that I am very stubborn and I don't like to ask for help. Um,
Yeah.
so well, hello, I'm faced with like this huge dilemma. And so I start stubbornly, and again, this is all happening internal, and I'm just like, I can feel another fracture of personality. So it like, and all of a sudden it's just like, hey, you need to pee. And I was just like, and that consciousness that didn't remember who I was or anything like
Yeah.
that, I I was like, no way. I'm not asking for help. No way. I'm gonna fuck this trip up for everybody. They're gonna think something's really wrong. I'm gonna upset people. I started having all of these different random worries and things, and that voice was just like, your your kidneys are gonna fail. And I was like, no, no. And as I was saying no, it started to like really hurt like more. And I was like, no, nope, I'm not doing it.
In
I'm not.
reality, no one would fucking care if you got up to pee,
No
right?
one
Or
would give
yeah,
a
no,
fuck.
but
They
in your head, you're like,
not
I'm gonna
not
ruin
not
the whole experience.
yeah, not only would most of them even notice,
Yeah, yeah.
but like but
So,
probably half of them would jump up to help me and
yeah,
take me
yeah,
there if I
yeah,
wanted.
yeah.
But
So you're getting
how
the pain.
yeah, so I get
Sorry,
the
sorry.
pain and I'm like no, and it increases almost like it's like testing me, like, you sure about that? And I was just like, nope. and and then so it's like um at the time I also had been doing all this different therapy kind of like leading up to it to prepare for it, and I was like did all these different types, these modalities of therapy, and my I was like seeing a psychedelic therapist too, and she like taught me this visualization exercise to help myself. Like if I started feeling really distressed, that I should start to visualize. We created like a safe place for me to visualize, like prior to that, and we would like practice going there often when I would have therapy. Like this is for months leading up to this thing. So started feeling distressed enough that I started going to that place. That place was my dog Jimmy at the time, R.I.P. Love you,
Oh,
King.
oh.
At the time, he was like a safe place for me, and so I imagined myself to be like tiny in his fur, and I was like sort of inside his fur, like almost like this huge, like, furry blanket, and like that I could see his head like a giant, like dragon protecting me, sort of like,
Honey,
and
I
so
Shrunk the
like,
Kids or whatever.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
kind of, or almost that like maybe he was just giant and I was normal or something. But like, so. So I went into Jimmy's fur and I could like see him, and it like it did make me feel a little bit better,
Oh,
but I could still feel like fuck, I still need to pee. Like, all right. And so I was like later Jimmy like left him, and I'm back in the thing. And again, it's interesting because I still didn't have a concept of myself, but I was accessing certain things like that. Like um, memories like in that moment accessing that safe place. I don't even know if I actually remembered his name. I don't know if I was like, oh, this is what my teacher taught me. It was just like we had kind of like worked on it to the point where it would kind of be like reflexatory, so I would just do it. Um and it did help a little bit. It helped in another experience a lot, but in that moment it didn't really help that much. And so I find myself that, I'm also like on the non-existent beach, and I'm in the boat, the polyrhythm, I'm in all the things, and then I'm aware of the pee, and the other voice is talking to me and it's testing me, and then all of a sudden like that narrative of that consciousness that was in the hut that needs to pee, and that fractured part of myself that was sort of taunting me and sort of asking me like, you need to pee, like, hey, you need to ask for help. It started like saying like, just ask for help. And I'm just like, no, no way. And it just kept getting, it was like escalating. And I was like, I'm not fucking doing that. And they're like, really? Really? You're like, you're that stubborn? You're not gonna, and that's like me asking myself that, going back and forth. All of a sudden it like completely expands into this super complex narrative that feels like I'm in like almost like a James Bond movie or something. And like it's like the entire world is set to explode. And the only way that it cannot explode is if you ask for help. And like
It's a
this,
lesson. It's a
yeah,
life
yeah,
lesson. It's
yeah.
giving you a
And I
life lesson.
and I was just like, let it fucking burn, baby. Like, and I'm sitting there and like I am just like, no way. And like all of a sudden, like I was like getting engulfed in flames. Like immediately, it was just like, and I was like in flames, and I was just like, it was like pure obliteration. And like so many though, like I can't even tell you, leading up to that moment of obliteration, it was just like infinity. Like the loop, the loop I went on in that Disney ride, like I can't even explain to you. Like I truly felt like I had spent years there. And
Wow.
felt like I also understood how it felt to be a pebble on a beach forever, for eternity, with nothing to do. And so anyway, pure obliteration happens, and like instantaneously, as soon as that happens, as soon as pure obliteration, all of the narratives collapse. It's engulfed in flames. And as that happens, the fucking lantern in the room gets lit, and it's the end of the ceremony. And all of a sudden the room lights up, and I'm like, whoa, okay. uh I'm disoriented. I'm kind of relieved. I'm like, I remember everything. All of a sudden, it's like I came out of a hypnotic trance in some way. And I'm instantly a little panicked though, because the previous ceremony, when that happened, it was like I instantly recognized that I was almost sober pretty much. I was like, oh my God, it's fully, it was like that thing matched up with this thing ending like almost exactly, right?
Whoa.
But this night when it happened, I was like, I am very much so still in the medicine. And I was like, whoa, okay. I'm still definitely feeling this, still I'm tripping very hard right now. Um, and I need to pee really bad. So like I stumble up, get myself to the bathroom, can't pee. And I'm just sitting
What
there,
the fuck?
and I'm like, fuck, like this is horrible. And it feels terrible. And I just feel like, fuck, did I fuck myself up? Like, how could that be? Like, it's been 4 hours. I've held it for so much longer than that before. Like, what the fuck? And so I still feel really bad, and I'm also tripping really hard and struggling. And and then I wind up basically, so they keep the Moloka open like all night, and often people will sleep in there, if they just
Wow.
want to, stay there for the vibes, or they just, some people like literally are still coming down. So it winds up becoming like almost like a after hours sort of like urgent care in some ways. And so I tell my friend who I'm there with, like, hey, I don't think I don't think I can go back to my bungalow. Like, I can't walk. I'm so dizzy. I feel so fucked up right now. Um, I think I need to stay here. He was like, okay, yeah, I'll just stay with you for a bit. And so I like lay down, and I'm just like really struggling. I'm tripping really hard still. And I'm just like, why is this still happening? Like, why is it still going? And like he stayed for me with like for like probably another 2 hours ish. So at this point we're pushing 8 hours, and I'm just like,
Jeez.
I don't know what to do. He falls asleep, he's there. I'm just like, fuck. And I start having this really intense like hallucination, this really wild vision. And it was basically like leading up to this whole experience, I was having all these crazy synchronicities around octopus, around like octopi, octopuses, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And I wound up having this intense vision of this octopus being above me, like floating in the in the ceremony house.
Whoa.
It was in the pitch blackness, and I could see it, and like all of a sudden, like everything in the house kind of went away, and I was floating in space, like this just empty space with this octopus, and we had this very emotional interaction because I was pretty fearful of it leading up to it, to be honest, because I was having all these really bizarre synchronicities and starting to have dreams about it and starting to feel like this is like an entity or something I'm going to encounter. And sure enough, I encounter it, and I'm like, in that moment though, I didn't really feel fear. It was kind of really very interesting to me. And then it starts kind of like telepathically talking to me and
Whoa.
telling me, um, like basically explaining, it kept saying, this is what it's like to be me. And at first I was kind of confused by what it meant by that, but I started like, with my psychedelic brain, in that moment, it really started to like metaphorically work for me. And it was like, I was interpreting that as I had sort of cast this entity out into space on its own because I was fearful of it. I wouldn't interact with it. And sort of like it was just this thing floating in space all alone by itself with no one to interact with. It basically was the embodiment of this pebble on a beach with no other beings
Weird.
to
Yeah.
interact with, right? And I was like, "Oh my God, like I'm so sorry. Like I didn't mean to do that." And like, it basically was giving me this like super powerful download of like how precious like other human beings are, and like other beings just being able to interact, being able to be like alive and to be able to communicate and just be in the world. And it would like really like it like put that into me in this like super powerful way. Um and so like that happened and I kind of snapped out of it for a second. And 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 my friend who had stayed with me, like I asked him to stay. Basically just said like I need you to stay. Um like I really could use you here. And he was like, yeah, yeah, no problem. And it was like instantaneously I like got up, ran to the bathroom and pissed, like
Whoa.
no problem. And I was like, I realized all of a sudden like that my purge wound up being like around like peeing. It wasn't vomiting or anything else, but like this was my version of that.
Weird. That's
Um,
wow.
and what was really wild was like this was probably like we're in like the 12-hour-ish range of something that's usually pretty much dead on like four hours ish. Um, and it was like all of a sudden sober, like just gone. It just like it went away. So it felt very, very like intelligent. Like it felt like it was like, no, we're not leaving until you learn this lesson.
Yeah.
So it basically made me ask my friend for help. Like if I hadn't, I don't even know what, like I'd be still tripping to this day, you know? I don't know, but it felt very like, I mean, I can very easily rationalize that and say like that was my subconscious, like knowing I needed to learn this lesson. And it somehow like still, even the most rationalized you can get with it, there is a mystery of the chemical component because it's really just not supposed to last that long. So the fact that somehow consciously I was able to connect to this chemical and it worked together, conspired against me to teach me a lesson. Um, it's pretty amazing.
So
So
how, what about now? So does that help you up till now to ask for help more or no? Are you still like I'm
oh,
stubborn?
no,
Or,
it's still a challenge for me, but I will say that it was certainly something that I got better at after that incident for sure. I mean, it because what happened is it really shined a light on what an issue it was for me. Like
mm-hmm.
when I was like processing all of that with my therapist afterwards, she was like, "Let it burn." She's like, "That's pretty heavy." She's like, you decided the ultimate thing. Like you literally let the world like get destroyed because you couldn't humble yourself. And I was like, I know, like it's psychopathic. Like she's like, it's not psychopathic, but it's definitely indicative of like a problem that you need to work on. Um, you know, she's like, there's a part of you that knew that that wasn't real, and that's why you were able to hold your ground in that way. There was a way in which you were almost role playing. Um, she's like, don't get attached to the idea that, you're demented and you wanted to kill everybody. She's like, no, she's like, it's not that. It was just showing you how strong of an attachment you have to like being strong and like not asking other people, not inconveniencing other people
Yeah.
when ultimately she's like, there were all these other things I had written down in my journal about it, and it was like the reflection I had the day after was something like, there is you're giving someone a gift by giving them the opportunity to help you.
Mm,
And that there will be people in which who can't accept that gift because they're already at capacity or whatever. However, there are people who will see it as such and take delight in it and really um, fill that gap for you and be there for you. And that's part of the organism of humanity, and that's what we're supposed to do for each other. So it was very illuminating for me. I still have resistance around it, but um, it, you know, and I've done more psychedelics, obviously, and worked on that even more. I mean, I worked on that a bit more with that therapist, like on we did MDMA, did like a pretty high dose MDMA session that was just me and her, and she was basically silent the entire time, but afterwards it was just like I filled up an entire notebook on the MDMA session,
wow.
full book, just the entire time writing as it was happening. And then afterwards we spent an equal amount of time processing it all and talking through it all. And so we actually got to like revisit that because a lot of things that happened in my ayahuasca stuff kind of got um revisited in that MDMA experience and just in a different way. And yeah, so I've done more work around it and then continue to do work around it in therapy. But it's interesting to just realize that when you have stuff like that, um, it's really difficult to change it. Um, you know, and certainly I've made progress for sure. But I can see the parallel to people who are working through trauma, who are working through addiction, people who are working through all kinds of stuff. And it's really just not like a one and done thing. Even like no matter how profound it is, it's like you're talking about like a fucking brick wall that you're just like chipping away at, and it takes a while before you're actually through to the other
Yeah.
side. So
dude, and
Yeah.
especially I was also thinking about being neurodivergent and um you growing up neurodivergent and also already feeling different a little than the other kids and stuff. And so, and us trying to live kind of like a normal, um, trying to be normal, or people putting that on you. Like, oh, you
Oh
don't
yeah.
seem like you're this, or you don't seem like you're this.
Oh God.
So, so asking for help, even on top of that, as you grow up, and then now you're in your 40s, it's
Yep.
like you just, you already get the pressure already from just people in everyday life. Like, I mean, I wasn't diagnosed until 2021, but then my wife and I call it the spectrum goggles. You put those on and then you look back through your history and you go, oh, kind of like how you were saying, like when your wife got diagnosed, you were like learning about everything and you're like, wait a second, like start thinking
Oh
back,
my God. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like just I mean, that's just what I guess was I can go on a whole tangent, but what I was trying to tie in there is just like with
No, I love it.
the you know asking for help. It's like it's really hard for me even to ask for help because of, kind of same thing. It's just like I don't want to inconvenience anyone. Plus, like I've already been different and I know I've felt different my whole life. So it's like it's kind of I just want to kind of do this on my own and show people I
Hmm.
can do it on my own, and
Yeah,
but
the stigma of it, and you want to, yeah, like show that. I mean, it's yeah, it's insidious. The feeling that, somehow asking for help is somehow equivalent to weakness or something like that. And it's like, man, for me, it was the exact opposite. It was the fucking hardest thing. It was like really took all the strength that I had, um, to do that. And I think that that's probably a pretty prevalent thing in our society, especially amongst men. Like, like it's just like the whole toxic masculinity thing. Like,
yeah,
it's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But like, yeah, I mean, when you're neurodivergent, there certainly is a stigma that many of us don't don't want to ask for help, or don't want to admit that, we need things differently. We don't want to ask for permission to record the thing. We don't want to, like, you know ask for different treatment, even though that's what we need a lot of the times. So it's tough, but I've definitely learned. I mean, my wife has been a huge part of me learning that, like, we have different needs, and that it's completely the only way we're getting through this is if we can vocalize them. Um, so it's a really powerful thing to learn and utilize. So has it been? Are you autistic, or like?
yeah,
Okay, so
yeah. But I think I would have been back in the day I would have been um diagnosed as having Asperger's, but I don't think they
sure.
diagnose that anymore. But
No, yeah, yeah.
and I might have ADHD, but I scored low on it. But I it's same thing when my wife got diagnosed with it, and
You
I
see
I
some
like
stuff.
yeah, and I'm like maybe I should go back and see. I don't
Uh huh.
know,
Uh
but
huh.
but
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, so have you experienced any, like, was there, what made you, like, get diagnosed, or like seek diagnosis? Like, what kind of made you feel like, oh, hmm.
yeah. No, I mean I've always felt a little different, and then
Hmm.
but basically my wife was nannying an autistic teenager, and then she would go to seminars and things with her and get books, and then she was reading, she's like, isn't everyone like this, like what the heck. And then so I
Hmm.
started checking out the book she was reading, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And then she went to get diagnosed, and then I was like, I should too. And we found it is very expensive, but we found a nonprofit organization, and they are amazing, and they're called Grasp. And uh we went through them. We had to, uh, you have to apply and then talk to them and then, go through some interviews and things. And then they uh, take you over these, that you get assigned a therapist. And then you go, it was about, I think, 3 months, I
Hmm.
think it took. and we did different tests and things. But basically, it was just like I wanted to know because after reading everything and what my wife was learning, and then I was like, oh man, okay. Like, and then it was hard to kind of like accept it at first. But then again, like putting on the goggles and looking back, I was like, oh, like I grew up being in bands. Every band I've been in, they'd have a sit down talk with me. Why don't you hang out with the whole crew? Like why, like you're always going off by yourself and like,
Uh-huh.
why aren't you hanging out with us? Why aren't you, and I'm, you know,
Mhm.
things like that. But I don't know, did I answer your question?
Oh yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty
I
much,
mean, I was just curious. I mean,
yeah.
I feel like I've been yammering this whole time and I
No,
haven't
no, it's amazing, dude.
I never know because like again, this is like a classic neurodivergent thing, like you we're always like unsure about cues and not quite like when I get into interview mode, like or podcast or whatever you want to call it, it's like I switch on my brain to like output mode, and I'm like, okay, like now is the time to just be honest and just be yourself and like just talk. And so it becomes very difficult for me to shut it off though,
Yeah.
um when I did a podcast for a while. I did it for about a year and I loved it because it was such a different switch, most of the time it was just, my job to just keep them talking and just, whatever. But sometimes they would switch it on me and like I had to be like, like kind of like I would like get caught off guard sometimes, but then I prepared myself like, okay, sometimes it's going to be just a conversation that flows,
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean now sometimes I get a little self-conscious when I'm just the guest or whatever because I switch into talk mode and then I just talk and then I'm like, I wonder if they'd like me to ask them questions about themselves, which is like it's like such an autistic thing to like think. You're like, maybe they would like that, And you're like, I find myself thinking like that all the time when I have interactions with people, like,
Yeah.
like when I'm like, at the cash register, like just thinking like, would this person like do they want me to bag? Like, is that what does that mean? Like, and then
Mm-hmm.
I really sometimes really struggle with those kind of interactions, but um, you know, stuff like this, you're a very warm person, and I feel very comfortable with the fact that you're neurodivergent too. So it was just very like, oh, I I'll ask about your experience on this.
Yeah, no, it's just great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love the info dumping too because that's like something I do, and so like when people come on BrewFOs and they info dump, it's like my favorite thing. I'm just like, yeah, like taking it in. But like
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of people don't understand that, and then usually when I info dump after, I'm like, shit, what did I say? Did I say too much? Did I give them too
Y-
much? Did I?
Yep.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
how honest was I? Oh yeah, because that's a problem with me too, is being a little too honest. And
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
it's hurts people's feelings, and I'm like, I didn't mean to, or like it'll offend somebody, and I wasn't trying to be mean, or you know.
Yeah,
So
I'm already like self-conscious about telling that story at the top. I'm like, man, I hope you don't clip that one out. Like, like yeah. But
dude, you want me to cut out anything I can, but I think everything you said has been really helpful and really awesome and like I mean, dude, again, I could talk to you like there's so much I want to know about your brain and tour experiences and stuff we probably didn't even
yeah,
we don't have time.
we'll do another one sometime.
Yeah, dude. It was sick,
I'll
dude.
come back anytime.
This is rad. We've how long do we even talk? I don't even know what time it is.
We
Yeah,
did
it's
3 hours, bro.
yeah, that's wild, man.
We Roganized this bitch.
We did. Well, thanks, dude. This has been really fucking cool. I hope you have a great night. You, Benny, and Sarah, right?
Yep.
Sarah, you, Benny, and Sarah.
Uh-huh.
And thanks, dude. I don't know what else to say. Just what I'll have links, everybody. I'll have links in the episode notes to everything, Colin. Check it out. And anything to look forward to that you want to plug or anything, or just have your links up.
Yeah, no.
How they can
I
follow
got I
you.
g- yeah, do whatever you want. If there's anything I said that's interesting to you, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. I mean, I'm relatively easy to find on the internet, so you can have as much or as little contact with me as you wish in that way. If it's too much for me, then you probably won't hear back from me. But
Straight
it's
up, straight up.
not personal.
Yeah.
It's just about where I'm at the time. But yeah, no, I love interacting with people, and I like doing this a lot. So thanks for the convo, and yeah, um, I look forward to. I want to check out your show more, and like I haven't had that much time to really like dig into it, but it seems like you've had some pretty interesting people on.
Yeah, dude. Thanks, dude. You're it's it's you're the third or fourth musician I've had on. But I'm stoked, dude, because again, you're in some two really sick bands that I
Thanks, buddy.
respect and think are awesome. So have a great night, Colin. Thank you so much for being on here and hopefully talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man.
All right, dude.
All right. Good
Later.
night.